Good morning once again to everyone. So, last week we would have stopped. We're still at chapter 3.1, and Shahid. And last week we would have stopped. Uh, we would have stopped before communication channel. So the last thing we would have looked at is the advantages and disadvantage of the standalone and computerized network. So let's see. Can anyone, let's do a quick review. Can anyone tell me, we looked at five types of network last week. They all have like a similar name. Can anyone remember those five? Or if you can remember one, and somebody else
Yep.
might. What you said, Morano?
Simplex.
Simplex. No, we're talking about the the type of network. When we're looking at the name of the network is based on the size, the use, and so on. What was the smallest network size?
Sir, I think that is pan.
Yeah,
LAN.
So the pan is the smallest. What's after the pan?
LAN.
Sir, one.
The LAN. What's after the LAN?
LAN.
One.
Sir, MAN, man.
The man. So pan, LAN, man. What's after the man?
Sir, WLAS. One.
The one. The WLAN is basically an extension of the LAN. So it's basically the LAN, but it's just giving you a wireless LAN. That's what the W stands for, wireless LAN. So you have the LAN, but your router is going to give you that wireless part. So it's an extension of the LAN. So very good. The PAN is the smallest. Then we have the LAN, the MAN, and then the WAN. And the WLAN, which is wireless, is an extension of that LAN. We had three network configuration. Anybody remember the shapes?
Bus, ring, and star.
Very good. Bus, ring, and star. And always remember, the network looks exactly like those shapes. The star looks like a star, the ring looks like a ring, and the bus looks like a bus. Very good. So, why do we choose the star? Why do we choose it over the ring and the bus?
Because it's
Because if there's a malfunction in any of the systems other than the hub, the rest of the devices will continue to run.
Very good. That's one reason. What were you saying, Robert?
because it's the quickest.
Yes, because it's the quickest, it's the fastest. So you get more speed from a star network. So you get to transfer your data much faster. You get to send a picture faster. You send all your videos faster, and so on. Very good. So we're gonna continue today with you want to save your workbook? Yes. Give me a second. Why is this acting up? Good. Right, so we're going to continue today with communication channels, and we'll be looking at, now we'll be getting into simplex and so on, how data traverses the different cables and so on. We can look at the different types of cable and so on. So let's get into it. The first paragraph, communication channels. We start at the bottom. Zamir, we'll start with you. Let me see if you wake up.
The communication channel is the method or medium for use of transmitting data. Characteristics of communications channel include transmission mode, direction of data flow, transmission media, and transmission speed.
Good. So this is a term that you should remember, communication channel. The communication channel is basically a method or a medium that is used to transmit the data. So it is what is used to transmit the data. Is it Wi-Fi? Is it cables? What was used? Is it Bluetooth? What was used? That is the communication channel. Now, what characterizes that communication channel is the transmission mode, the direction of the data flow, the transmission medium, and the transmission speed. All of that are characteristics of the transmission channel. So we can look at the first characteristic, that is transmission mode. So Varshini, you can read that for us.
Transmission modes. Transmission modes or rates determine the number of characters that can be transmitted in 1 second. Two modes are synchronous. Synchronous. Data is transmitted at irregular intervals and at a low speed of 1 character at a time. Synchronous. Data is transmitted at regular intervals with high-speed simultaneous transmission of large blocks of data.
Very good. So, transmission mode or rates. It is usually measured in seconds. So, that is why if we go back to GT&T's page, when we're looking at the internet connections, please. Where is it? Oh, C-plans. Where is it, man? Yeah. If you look at when we were looking at the data speed last week, we looked at what is MBP, and you notice at the end here you have this S. It is megabits per second. So 20 megabits every second can be sent across this connection. 50 megabits per second every second. 50 megabits can be sent across this line. So transmission mode is measured in seconds. Every second a certain amount of characters can be sent. So that is why it is also measured in bits, because 1 bit would refer to the character. So 50 megabits per second. Can anybody remember what number a mega refers to? Anyone?
No, sir. Not me.
if we were to do the conversion, a mega basically corresponds to a million. So 50 million bits per second can be sent across this connection here. Now there are two modes that can be used. Asynchronous, which is basically data being transmitted at irregular intervals. This speed is slower. It's sending one character at a time. So asynchronous, basically it's sending one piece of data, then another. It's like a trail. It's like a bus. It only one after each other the data can be sent. So if you were to let's see, where's Paint? So at the top here we're gonna have asynchronous, and at the bottom here we're gonna have synchronous. So asynchronous is basically, say this is our cable, and we're gonna say that we're gonna number it 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are the pieces of data that are being sent across this cable. So the data that is number 2 cannot reach before 1 because it has to go before 1. So 1 is sent first, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. So it's sent basically one after each other. So that's why basically it is slower, because the data is basically trailing each other. So unless 1 reaches, 2 will not be able to, 3 will not be able to, 4 will not be able to, and so on. So it's one character at a time, and the speed is slower. That is asynchronous. Now for synchronous, the data is transmitted at regular intervals. This one has higher speeds, and it simultaneously transmits large blocks of data. So simultaneously means, what does simultaneously mean? Anyone knows?
So
At the same time.
One directly after.
Robert is correct. At the same time. So synchronous is at the same time. So your computer will determine how many data it can send at the same time. So imagine this as the cable here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So all of these are being sent at the same time, all these pieces of data. So it doesn't matter when 1 reach, doesn't matter when 3 reach, because the rest of the pieces will reach. They have their basically their own signal connection so that they can reach whenever. And the computer now is gonna piece all of those data together. So asynchronous, the one with the A, the data is sent one after each other. That is why it is slower, because you have to wait for the data in front to reach first. Whereas synchronous, you get more speed because you can send more data at once. It's not only limited to 5, it can be more. It all depends on the technology that is being used. Good. So that is asynchronous and synchronous. Those are the two modes that data would use to be transmitted. Today, because we need more speed, that is why we have synchronous being used. But in some cases, we still have asynchronous in use. You'll see that when we are talking about internet connection. It's either this chapter or the next chapter, one or the other one. Anyway, just remember how the data travels across the line. for those two modes. So now the next we're going to look at direction of data flow. So let's see, Saskia, you can read the next two paragraphs.
Direction of data flow. Transmission lines in media can also be classified according to the direction in which data can flow. Simplex. Data in a simplex line can flow in only one direction, just like traffic in a one-way street. It is a send-only or receive-only line. Examples are radio, TV, computer to printers, public address systems, or any other one-directional transmission.
Good. So remember, what are we looking at? We're looking at what is a communication channel. It is a method that is being used to transmit data, and there are some characteristics of that communication channel. The transmission mode, that is the first characteristics we just looked at. That a transmission mode determines whether data is sent at the same time or not. The next characteristics we are looking at is the direction of the data flow. So the first type of data flow is the simplex. The simplex only sends data in one direction at a time. So an example is a radio. So actually not at a time. It can only send data in one direction. So it's just like a one-way street. You can only go in one direction. So your radio, your TV, they only send data in one direction. Your TV station, they would send out the TV channels through their antennas to your TV, but you cannot send them back any data. You can't send them back and tell them that, look, I'm not being able to see your TV channel and so on. You can't send that data through the TV. So it's only one way of sending data. Let's look at the other two duplex. Sahid. Said. Stavet, can you read for us? You're unmuted, but we're not hearing anything. Ryan? Robert?
Duplex. The internal half duplex line can flow in both directions, but only one way at a time. In other words, data can be either sent or received at any given time. TV radios can TV radios and walkie-talkies have duplex.
The other one too.
Full duplex. The internal full duplex line can be both sent and received at the same time, like traffic in a two-way street. Most modem connections today transmit full duplex, which increases efficiency as data flows and the same pair of wires in both directions simultaneously.
Good. So we have three ways that data can flow, that data can be sent. There are simplex, half duplex, and full duplex. A simplex connection only sends data in one direction. So only one direction it's sending that data. For example, your radio and your TV. You're only getting data in one direction. Now the half duplex is when you can send data in both directions, but you can only do so one at a time. One way at a time. So for example, a walkie-talkie. If in order for you to use a walkie-talkie, only one person can speak and the other person would have to listen. Then if you want to speak, the other person would have to listen. He would have to stop speaking and listen to you. Both of you cannot speak at the same time because that will cause distortion in the communication, and none of you will be able to understand what is being said. So that is half duplex. Only one side can send the data while the other side is receiving, and vice versa. So if we were to draw another diagram, wow, that was almost perfect. So we have simplex, then we have half, then we have full. So a simplex would only be, say for example, say this is the antenna. It only sends data in one direction, and this is your TV. So only one direction. Now a half duplex. So we have a device over here, a device over here. It can only send data in one direction at a time. So this person is either the sender and this person is the receiver, or this person here is either the receiver or this person here is the sender. So only one direction at a time. It can do both, but only one direction at a time. Now the full duplex, both can send and receive at the same time. So that's like a two-way street. You can go up and down. It doesn't matter who's connected. Everyone can send data. Everyone can receive data. So most modem connections today transmit full duplex. This increases efficiency as data flow on the same pairs of wires in both directions simultaneously. So we have a device here, a device over here. This device can send over here, and this device can send over here. So both can send at the same time. So with that in mind now, which one of these data flow do you guys think we are using today the most?
Full duplex, sir.
Anyone else?
Simplex, sir.
So that is correct. Full duplex. That is what is being used today. Remember, we are creating a network to share data, to share resources. So we want the technology that will allow us to send data at maximum speed. So we get maximum efficiency. so that we don't get any delay when it comes to sending our data. So out of all three of these data flow methods, the full duplex will give us the fastest connection because it is sending data and receiving at the same time. You don't have to wait until somebody send and then you could send back. You can send and receive at any time you wish. So it's the fastest one. But that doesn't mean that is what it is used everywhere, because in different scenarios you might want the different data flow. For example, the Simplex, that is most suitable for when you have a radio station and TV station. You won't make use of a full duplex there, because why does the TV station or the radio station need to receive data? Unless they want persons to tell them that their channels aren't working or something. But other than that, they don't need to receive data. So in those cases, a simplex is more suitable for that case. But in our network connection, sending and receiving data, sharing resources, and so on, we need that faster, reliable connection, which is the full duplex. Good. So we looked at two characteristics so far. We looked at the transmission mode, we looked at the data flow. Next we're going to look at the transmission media, what they use to transmit the data. But we missed this paragraph at the top here, so Renesia Waddle Renesia. You can read the next two paragraphs. Which is it?
To choose which channel to use, you must first decide how much information you want to transfer at any given time, how important it is to have a fast or slow transmission rate, as well as whether you want a full duplex, half duplex, or simplex channel. Transmission media. Data can be transmitted through various types of cabled, wired, or wireless media. Cabled media uses wires to transmit data. Wireless media transmits data through the air. Cabled media include those twisted pair, coaxial, and fiber optic cables. Wireless media include satellite, microwave, and infrared methods.
So the paragraph above is basically what I said earlier, what I said before, that depending on what is needed, that will determine whether you use full duplex, half duplex, and simplex, depending on what data you need to send, how you need to send it, and so on. Now, the transmission media, the third characteristic, is the media that is used to transmit the data. What is the network using to transmit the data? There's basically two categories that you will have. That is wired and wireless. And under those categories now, you will have different medias for them. So for the wired media, which is cables, you're going to have twisted pair cable, coaxial cable, and fiber optic cables. These are just some examples. There's more. For wireless now, you can have satellite, you can have microwave, infrared, and so on. Bluetooth, that is on your phone. All of those are wireless connections. So, like I said last week, it does not matter what method you use to connect to the network. Once you are connected, you are able to transmit data. So it can be wired, it can be wireless, the network does not care. All depends on what you can use at the moment. So we're going to look at the descriptions of cables first. and then we're gonna look at wireless. So for cable, good. Let's have Ramona.
Cabled media. Cabled media include twisted pairs, coaxial, and fiber optic cables. Twisted pairs or Ethernet cable. A voiceband channel can transmit data at a rate of 300 bits per second (bps) to 9,600 bits. The most popular form of transmitting data is via telephone lines. This is easy to handle and cheap, but relatively slow. You need a modem to do this, since telephone lines are built to handle analog data and not the digital data found in computers. Twisted pair wires are used from the form of data transmission.
Good. So the most common form of twisted pair. So twisted pair cable, another name for twisted pair cable is Ethernet cable. Now, a very common example of twisted pair cable is your telephone line. So that telephone cable that is coming into your house, not the one that is coming into your house, the one that is so on your house you will have a gray box. You're gonna have a black cable coming to your house, and from that black cable is gonna be connected to a gray box. Everyone know what I'm talking about? Does anyone have an idea?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, on your house you're gonna have a gray box, and that's where your telephone line is connected to. Now you're gonna notice another smaller cable coming out of it, that gray box, and that was connected to the wall jack inside of your home. That is the twisted pair cable. That is one form of the twisted pair cable. And that is used to transmit data. Now it is much cheaper, that is why it is used, but it is relatively slow. Now in order for you to use that cable, you need a modem. So that is why that same telephone line is plugged into your modem at home. So let me see if I can find an image of it. Right, this is how it would look. So this AT&T office, imagine it as GT&T, and from GT&T they will have a black cable running to your house, and on your wall you're gonna have a gray box that's gonna take that black cable, convert it now into the twisted pair cable, which is on the inside of your home. Then it's going to be connected to the wall jack, and then it's connected to your other devices. Then it's going to be connected to the modem, and that is how your router and all your computers in your home gets your internet connection. But we're just looking at the cable. The cable is that cable, the twisted pair cable is that cable that is coming from the gray box going to the wall jack. That's one example of the cable. Even the cable that is going from the wall jack to the modem, that is also another twisted pair cable. Now, for those of you who have let's see, modem and router. Good. So let's download that. Good. So at your home, you will have a modem. Some of you might have this gray modem. Some of you might have a white one. Depends on where you bought from GT&T or whatever service you're using. But you would have a modem, and you would have a cable connecting to your router at home. That cable is also a twisted pair cable. So also Ethernet cable. Remember, twisted pair and Ethernet, they basically use interchangeably. So it's just a different type of twisted pair cable, because if you ever looked at it, you will notice the size is different compared to the telephone cable that is plugged into your phone. So the telephone cable that's plugged into your phone is one type of twisted pair. The cable that is connecting your router to your modem, that is also another example of a twisted pair cable. You guys following?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good. So you should have an idea what the twisted pair cable is. I think there's an image here also. Yeah. So this is the image here of a twisted pair cable. This is what will go into your modem and inside of your router. Even your computer, your desktop computer, your laptop, it will plug, this same cable here will plug into your desktop or your laptop, and that is the Ethernet cable or the twisted pair cable. Alright, the next two paragraphs, we'll go to Fulan.
Unshielded twisted pair (UTP) is common in telephone cables. These cables have pairs of insulated copper wires twisted round each other to help eliminate interference from adjacent pairs and other electrical devices. The Ethernet cable is one of the most popular forms of network cables. It resembles a phone cable, but is slightly larger. These cables have different colors, which differentiate them from phone cables, which are gray in color. Like any cable, the Ethernet cable has various lengths, but the longer the cable, the weaker the strength of the signal.
Very good. So let me find another image again. Let's see if I search it right here. Twisted pair. So the reason why they are called twisted pair is because they are a pair of wires that are twisted. A pair of copper wires that are twisted together. And they're twisted together because they can interfere with each other. The electrical signals can interfere with each other. Because remember, you're sending data. And if the signals interfere with each other, it can corrupt your data that is being sent. So in order to prevent corrupting your data, to prevent interference with the signal, they would twist those cables. That's why they're called twisted pair cables. I'm looking for the one that is in your home. Good. So the one in your home would only have two cables inside of it. So if you guys ever get a chance to look at it, if you get an old cable, maybe you could cut it to look inside of it. You will see that there's only 2 cables inside of it. Why isn't this opening? Right. So your telephone cable only has 2 pairs of wires inside of it. Now, let me see if they mention it here. Okay, in case they don't mention it, how they have unshielded twisted pair, that refers to the Ethernet cables that you are seeing here. So if you notice, these cables, you're just basically seeing the cable. So let me go back to this image here. So you're only seeing the cable here. So in that example, it is an unshielded twisted pair. It has no shielding. If we were to search for shielded twisted pair, notice in this one here now, there is a shielding over the individual pairs to further prevent any interference and corruption of data and so on. So if you go back to the notes, the unshielded twisted pair, that basically has no shielding, but that is UTP. There's another one called STP, and you guys might want to take note of that. STP is called shielded twisted pair, and this is what it looks like. Each pair of cable would have a shielding around it so that it can protect that cable from interference. So there is UTP and there is STP. Now, obviously the STP is what is going to be more expensive because you have to pay for those additional shielding. So the UTP is what you will find almost everywhere. That's what's going to be mostly common. So your telephone cable, the cable that's being used to connect your modem to your router, the cable that you use to connect your laptop to the router, those will all be unshielded twisted pair. Now the Ethernet cable, even though it can refer to the telephone line cable, in computer, or you can say in networking, because we're talking about network. In networking, the Ethernet cable mostly refers to the cable that you would use to connect your computer to the router or your modem to the router. So that 4 pair of cable, that's what you would mostly use to mostly refer to as the Ethernet cable. These cables that you're seeing here. So notice we search for Ethernet cable, and mostly these are coming up. The ones that plug into your desktop, the one that plugs into your laptop, your modem, your router, and so on, because that's what we mostly refer to as the Ethernet cable, the one that plugs into those devices. Now, just like any cable, the longer the length of the cable, the weaker the signal of that cable. So Ethernet cables, they would have this connector at the end of the cable. So remember what the connector looks like. So the next cable that we're going to be looking at is the coaxial cable. All of you should be familiar with this cable because it's actually the cable that you use for your television. So, Pamela, you could read the next two paragraphs.
Coaxial cable. A broadband channel can transmit data at a rate of thousands of characters per second. Examples of broadband channels are coaxial cables and fiber optic cables. Coaxial cables are found on televisions, videos, and cable TV. They use thickly insulated copper wire and are capable of high-speed transmission but are difficult to install since the cable is somewhat rigid.
Good. So, something I missed was. Where was it? Alright. So, this term here, voiceband. So, a voiceband is, as the name would imply, it would be used to send voice data across the communication channel, and it has a transmission rate of 300 bits per second to 9600 bits per second. And notice that is bits, not kilobits, not megabits. That is just bits. So that is relatively slow for the data that we would want to share over the network. But that is only for voice. So back then, when you were making phone calls, we still make phone calls today. This was all that was needed to send that voice over the channel. Only 300 to 96 bits per second was needed. But today, because we need more, that's why we have broadband. So notice it ends with that same word, band, voice band, broadband. So the broadband is basically a channel that will allow you to send multiple types of data. So in network, the data are characterized based on the type. So you have voice, you have video, you have normal data. So all of those different types of data can be sent across a broadband. So when you hear broadband, think of different types of data being able to send across that connection. Now, because it allows different types of data, it basically has more speed. So that is why a broadband connection is what is being used today, because we need more speed. Now, examples of those broadband is going to be your coaxial cables, fiber optic cables, and even your Ethernet cable. So those are all using the broadband technology. Now, we just looked at the Ethernet. We're now going to look at the coaxial cable. So most of you should have seen this cable at your home. If you have a television, that cable is connected to your antenna that you would have at home, and the other end of the cable is connected to your TV. Have you guys seen that cable before?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
For those who haven't, this is what it looks like. So it's a single cable. This metal part that you see in here, it's a single cable, a single copper wire in the very center, and it is highly insulated. Now let me see if I find one with it. Yeah, so no, yeah, this one here. So this is how it would look. It has that black cover in, then it has this shield in and more shield in, and then another um, insulator, and then you have the actual cable inside of it. So if you were to just use this copper cable, you can get the connection. But because of preventing interference with the signal and so on, you have all of this shielding with the cable. So that's how a copper cable looks like. Now, it is thickly insulated, as you can see in the image. If you compare that to the Ethernet cable, the unshielded twisted pair, you can see how small the insulation is. But the copper cable has some very large insulation, and because of that, it is difficult to install because the cable is rigid. Because if you try to bend that cable, you might end up breaking the cable. So it's not as easy to install because you can't bend it around corners and so on. You just have to run it as it is so that you don't bend it too much to affect the signal. Alright, so let's see. We're going to look at the last cable, fiber optics, and next week we're going to look at the wireless connections. So let's have Morano.
Yes, sir, we're reading that. Wait, let me find. Sure. Okay. Fiber optic cable are similar to those used by large telephone and communication companies. These cables consist of clear glass fibers, and data is transmitted through them as pulse of light rather than electronic signals. This eliminates the problem of electrical interference. It is standard for connecting network between buildings. It is also not affected by moisture and lightning. Fiber optic cable can transmit signal over much longer distance than coaxial and twisted pair cables. They can also transfer information at vastly greater speeds. This makes it possible to use broadband for services such as video conferencing and interactive services.
Good. So the fiber optic cable has a lot of benefits, advantages, disadvantages, and so on, compared to um, twisted pair and coaxial cable. So we're gonna go at it one parts by parts again. Now the coaxial cable, it's what telephone companies would make use of. It is actually an expensive cable, so that's why you might not have it at your home. GTT is actually using it right now. That's what they are using for their Blaze connection. Notice they have the word high-speed fiber internet, other fiber network. That's what they're using for their Blaze connection. So it's an expensive cable. That is why they're taking so long actually to install it in different areas, because it's actually a difficult setup. Now, the cables consist of a clear glass fiber, and data is transmitted through them as pulses of light rather than electronic signals. So if you were to search for a fiber optic cable, this is what a fiber optic cable looks like. So these ends that you're seeing here are the glass connection. It can be glass or it can be plastic, but it is a clear tube that is used to transmit the data, and it uses light to transmit that data. Unlike your coaxial cable and your twisted pair, they use electric signals. Your fiber optic uses light. So it pulses the light in order to send that signal. Now, because it uses light, it basically eliminates the disadvantages that the twisted pair and the coaxial would have. They would have electrical interference because everything is electrical. But because a fiber optic is using light, it is not affected by electronic signals. It's not affected by electrical interference. So that's one advantage there. It's not susceptible or it's not affected so much by electronic signals or interference. Now, the standard for connecting networks between buildings not affected by moisture and lightning. So that's another advantage there again over the twisted pair and the coaxial. It's not affected by moisture and lightning because once again it is not electrical, it's just light. Now another advantage is that it can transmit over longer distances as compared to coaxial and twisted pair. Coaxial and twisted pair uses electrical signals. So as the distance gets longer, electrical signals break down. Whereas light, it can travel much farther distances because if you look at the sun, you can see how far away the sun is, but yet we can see the light. If you look at the stars, they're so far away, but yet we can see a star because light travels much farther than electrical signals. So that's why a fiber optic cable, it can be used over longer distances than a coaxial and twisted pair cable. And because they can use for farther distances, they can transmit faster speeds than a normal coaxial cable or a twisted pair cable. So that's why when persons or companies they want very high speed connection, they would actually make use of fiber optic cable. And for a fun fact, your internet has a backbone, and this is what the backbone looks like. All of the countries in the world are connected to each other. That is basically how you get your internet connection because of these different countries connected to each other. So can anyone guess what these countries are using to connect to each other? Based on all the cables we looked at so far?
So the fiber optic cable.
Very good. So all of these lines that you're seeing here are fiber optic connections because the fiber optic can be used to connect for larger distances. So it can be used to connect all of these different countries. I don't know if you guys ever paid attention to when GTT is saying that that their internet connection went down. They would say that their fiber optic connection to I think it's Suriname or Brazil. I think it's Suriname. One of the two, one of the countries went down or something damaged it or so on. So GTT is actually getting their internet connection through fiber optics to some other country. So that's how actually the internet is made. These different countries are connected to each other through these cables, through fiber optic cable, basically forming one large network. So, in review of what we looked at today, we looked at communication channel. What is a communication channel? It is a method used to transmit data. It has 4 characteristics. It has the mode, data flow, the transmission medium, and the speed. For the transmission mode, there's asynchronous and synchronous. Asynchronous sends the data one after each other and it is slower. whereas synchronous would send the data at the same time and it is much faster. For data flow, we have three methods. We have simplex, half duplex, and duplex, full duplex. The simplex, only one direction, half, both direction, but only one at the same time. And the full duplex is both directions at the same time. Then we looked at the third characteristic, that's the last one we looked at, which is the transmission media. Basically, what is used to transmit the data. Is it cables, which is wired, or is it wireless? So for the cables, we looked at twisted pair, we looked at coaxial, and we looked at fiber optic. Next week, we're going to continue with the wireless part of that transmission media, and I'm not seeing them indicating. Oh, well, in the paragraphs they would have indicated the transmission speed, because a voice band would give you 9600 megabits per second, and the coaxial and the twisted pair and so on would get different speeds and so on. I'll try to find an image that breaks down those speeds for you guys. Alright, that's all we're going to look at for today. If you guys don't have any questions, enjoy the rest of your day.
Same to you, sir. Stay safe.